Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Today we are going to speak about walnut. The Latin name of walnut is Juglans regia linnaeus. The genus name Juglans comes from the Latin juglans, which means walnut, and the species name regia comes from a Greek word, Carrion basilicon, which means basically the royal nut. Juglans regia belongs to the family Juglandaceae, and it has a number of synonyms, of which, for instance, Juglans orientis Dode. The common names of Juglans regia are, in English, walnut, in French, noix, in German, nussbaum, and in Spanish, nuez. The constituents of walnut are of two main categories. The first category in the seeds are polyunsaturated fatty acids, such as linoleic acid and linolenic acid, and you also find in the seed monosaturated fatty acids such as oleic acid, and this has been published in 1992 by Greve and co-workers, and in 2017 by Behan and co-workers. Other type of constituents in walnut are in the papery layer around the seeds that we call the seed coat, and the seed coat contains a substantial amount of polyphenol tannins such as elagitannins, including elagic acid. There is a lot of elagic acid in the seed coat of walnut. About 400 milligrams are present when someone takes 4 walnut. And you also have other elagitannins such as telimagrandin 1, and this has been published by Shimoda and co-workers in 2009. So it is fair to say that walnuts comprise two types of active constituents, which are, in one part, a fixed oil made of polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fatty acids, and you've got around the seed a small membrane, which is a papery layer called a seed coat, which is full of tannins, including elagic acid. Let us look into the medical history of walnut. Walnut is an ancient food. It goes back to the beginning of humanity. I suspect that walnut was found by the Greeks when they invaded Persia. It is also, I think there was a Latin name where they speak about Persica, meaning Persia. I'm not sure though, but what is for sure is that the walnut trees are mentioned in the Songs of King Solomon. This is the time about 10th century BC, and it is found in the Bible in chapter 6, verse 11. I also have the souvenir that somehow King Solomon was watching at the seed shape and was comparing it already to the brain of a human being, and it is actually quite compelling that a seed of walnut looks very much like a human brain. Perhaps this is the sign, the theory of the signatures, but we are not going to speak about this now. The Greek physician Dioscuri that was living at the time of the Roman Emperor Nero knew very well walnut, and in his Materia Medica writes that walnut increases the formation of bile and is good for tumors. Later, around the 10th century AD, We've got the doctors of the School of Salerne in southern Italy. They have produced a book called Regimen Sanitatis Salernitatum, in which walnut is described as good for the stomach and antidotile, but they warn that it is not good to eat too much walnut, and especially with both intake of fish and meat. Let's go now to the Germany 16th century, where Leonhard Fuchs, professor of medicine at the University of Tübingen, he wrote a magnificent book called De Historia Stirpium Commentarii Insignes in Latin, beautiful manuscript, where commenting on Dioscoride, he says that walnuts are hot to the second degree, and they are dry. Yes, they are dry to the first order. Later on in the 18th century, the French pharmacist apothecary Nicolas Lemery recommends the walnut oil as carminative and also good for the kidneys. What about today's medicinal uses of walnut? There are plenty, especially in Asia. In Turkey, today walnut is used as a cholesterol lowering medicine. We also have in Iran, interestingly, walnut is used for the treatment of gout, arthritis, and arthralgia, which suggests, some anti-inflammatory properties. In Pakistan, walnut is warming, also used as carminative and for sore throat. And in India, it is used for rheumatisms and as memory enhancer. What are the beneficial effects of walnuts on the aging cardiovascular system? We are going to look into two main aspects. The first aspect is the blood pressure. We've got studies on animals in rats that are being given this steroidal substance, like for instance anti-inflammatory, the dexamethasone, and they are given this for 15 days at high dose, and this is going to result in an increase of diastolic blood pressure. But if they are given a methanol extract of walnut at the dose of 200 milligram per kilo per day, these rats are going to have a decrease of diastolic blood pressure from 128 to 109 millimeters of mercury, and these effects are similar to captopril, a drug given at 25 milligrams per kilo and per day. This has been published by Joucard and co-workers in 2007, and the authors are suggesting that intake of walnut increases nitric oxide availability in the vascular system. Now let us look into the effects of walnut on human volunteers. We've got a number of studies. The first one is a study done by Sanchis and co-workers in 2019. We've got people suffering from chronic kidney diseases. When kidneys are not functioning well, the filtration of water is decreased, and therefore there is retention of water in the cardiovascular system, and therefore there is high blood pressure. And these patients taking daily for 30 days about 30 grams of walnuts had a decrease of systolic blood pressure by about 4 millimeters of mercury. In a subsequent study by Stephen and co-workers in 2021, healthy subjects taking walnut had a decrease of diastolic blood pressure and, interestingly, of heart rate. Now, we say just now that the seed coat of walnut is very rich in tannins, such as ellagic acid, and in fact, when ellagic acid is given orally at the dose of 30 mg per kilo per day to rats, and this for 4 weeks, this ellagic acid is able to prevent increase of blood pressure induced by a substance called L-NAME. It's a bit complicated, but basically L-NAME is going to inhibit the production of nitric oxide. And this intake of ellagic acid was able to restore plasma nitrate and nitrite, a study done by Jordao and co-workers in 2017. What are the effects of walnut on blood lipid and glucose? Rats on high-fat diet given a seed coat extract containing polyphenols and extract given at the dose of 200 mg per kilo per day was able to reduce plasma triglycerides, and the mechanism involved was peroxisomal oxidation in the liver, study of Shimoda and co-workers in 2009. Let us go for animal studies, in human studies. We've got a number of publications starting 1999 by Lavedrine and co-workers, where it was something like almost epidemiological. It was in France, and they looked into people consuming walnuts daily, and they observed that these people having walnut in their daily diet had an increase of HDL cholesterol. Later on, a study by Tufel and co-workers in 2015 reports that hyperlipidemic patients consuming 30 grams of walnut per day for 2 months had also, interestingly, an increase of HDL cholesterol from about 31 to 38 milligram of deciliters. And we've got a study by Sanchis and co-workers in 2019 where people taking 30 grams of walnut for 30 days, people with kidney failures, had a decrease of HDL cholesterol by 5.4 milligram per deciliters. Interestingly, the intake of walnut oil, which means the crushed seeds without the seed coat, and that oil taken at the dose of 15 gram per day for 3 months, and by type 2 diabetic patients, was able to decrease fasting blood glucose from 158.3 to 137.9 milligram per deciliters in a study published by Ziba and Nezad and co-workers in 2016. What can we say in conclusion about taking walnut? Obviously, the intake of, say, 30 grams of fresh walnut per day, but it doesn't have to be every day. It can be, say, for instance, 3 to 4 times a week at lunch or dinner or even breakfast, might, in the light of this published evidence, be able to mitigate blood pressure, also to improve HDL cholesterol, and in diabetic patients, perhaps to decrease fasting glucose. Now, walnut is not without side effects, and a paper published by Lina Soro and co-workers in the 70s reports that consuming walnut causes goiter in rats. So it may interfere with this thyroxine metabolism. If you are suffering from goiter pathologies, please consult your medical doctor before engaging on walnut diet. As commentaries, we can say that the effect on the blood pressure by walnut seems to be mediated by the polyphenolics. In the study of Ziba, Nezad and co-workers in 2016, the intake of walnut oil, which means without the tannins, has no effect on blood pressure. But on the long term, it can be said that the unsaturated fatty acids might be able to prevent, because of their double bonds, oxidation. And you've got a paper published by Berryman and co-workers in 2013 saying that intake of walnut oil had effects on endothelial function. Another study by Dean and co-workers says that taking 15 grams of walnuts per day for 4 weeks had no effect. So in conclusion, we can say that the intake of walnuts, say for instance 3 to 4 times per week during meals, as salads for instance mixed with olive oil, not in excess, not more than 30 grams, perhaps not every day, say 3 to 4 times per week, should help in having a healthier cardiovascular system. With this, I wish you all the best.